Well, good afternoon. I'd like to begin our seventh in a series of campus open forums regarding the budget. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for adjusting your calendar. I've been with legislators, finished with Dale Kuyinga, who's one of the key folks around a number of things affecting the UW system in terms of capital budget and some of the things that we're working on in the community with our partnership with Milwaukee Public Schools and MATC regarding Bradley Tech. And I've also had some other meetings this morning with some legislative leaders, and want to tell you those are important. I'll talk a little bit in more detail about those, but that's why we're meeting at 2:15 today, and I appreciate that. I just finished, and they knew they had a heads up I had to jump out early to be able to address this, our campus budget forum. In terms of the format that we'll use today, we'd like to hear briefly from me and in more detail from the larger budget task force folks, because they've got some of the information that they have been working on for some time, and we're able to unveil for you really some of the things that we've got moving forward for the first approach, the first phase, and then the second phase. And included in that first phase will be some things that came out in the news over the weekend regarding the voluntary separation incentive plan. So I want to talk about that in a little bit more detail. We'll have the Q&A in terms of open discussion, as you can see here, and then we'll move into more detail on the Budget Communication Task Force. Let me first of all tell you that just in brief, we had about a week and a day ago, we had basically had some ideas that had been formulated and great deal of agreement among the Budget Task Force folks about this plan that we're going to share with you today. Included in that was a voluntary separation incentive plan, and I didn't want to have that go out in an email or HTML. I thought it'd be best to share with you the details today. That was our best intention. That's what happened. We all know the idea. We've been here, some of us, a long time, and you know the adage in any organization is you don't want to hear something in the newspaper before you hear it from leadership or from the workplace. But unfortunately, my intent had been to share it with you today, but things weren't always able to go that way, and some discussions were held, and here we are. So here we are with the news coming out. You saw my email from Saturday where I explained some of the background, and I just want to make sure that you know that was not the intent. That's not how we would normally communicate, but I think that you'll hear the details today. You have seen already a number of the websites with respect to this. Let me point out a couple other things you can see on the screen behind me. That the voluntary separation incentive plan, and we're going to go with those 4 syllables instead of the 10. We'll just call it the VSIP, probably a lot today. That's just one measure of many. And when we talk about the impact, we anticipate, depending on eligibility and how many people would accept that we may save some small number of dollars in terms of in the scale of the cut. So $1.5 or $2 million against what potentially is a $24 to $26 million cut. So it's one measure. One employee leaving is not a great outcome. That is unsatisfactory. That's not good. So I want to put that context out there, that's unfortunate. But we see we're the 6th campus, I believe, across the UW system. I'm anticipating that most all of the institutions will probably do this. It's something that does allow, when we look at some of the background in terms of how the process will work, at least some strategic perspective on this. In other words, not everybody is eligible. We all can't participate in this, but we'll talk about how we'll get there. You are our greatest assets. We had an event on Saturday that was here. It actually started on Friday and Saturday. We had 950 high school students that came from around the state. They're STEM high school students participating in the Wisconsin Science Olympiad. They were the regional finalists, and they're here to compete for their final awards. And we had in this room about 1,000 people. It was a remarkable day. And the staff and the faculty that participated, and I think of Kristen Murphy, who was standing over here, and Peter Geisinger, who was back a little further, and they both talked about how important this type of initiative is, what it means for not just the future UW-Milwaukee in terms of having the best and the brightest across the state that are here to see what happens and to participate in this high-energy, great activity, but for them to really help think of their futures and for us to make that difference that we do, the life-transforming experiences. And I see that from all of you. I see that every day, and it's just, with regret that we talk about any of these types of things. More broadly, we're dealing with a situation that we didn't ask for, but we are going to find the best ways to manage through this. And I want to give a credit to all the individuals, not just all of you, but the individuals who have been working on our task forces so diligently and so hard across our faculty, staff, students, individuals who are in administration that have helped us navigate so far down this path. Recognize we don't know the size of the cut. We don't know yet the final outcomes, but we have to plan, we have to prepare. So some of the things I mentioned, I was with, at least phonetically, with Senator Darling this morning, and she maintains a tremendous amount of support, recognizing what UWM has done and continues to do. And we talked about some of the work that she had helped lead and how we can continue to try to find that support for UW-Milwaukee. Some promising things there. There are continuing meetings between Tom and myself, especially Tom Lujak, a lot of meetings with all the members of the Joint Finance to continue to lobby and advocate for UW-Milwaukee as well as the UW system. We had our Regents meeting last week. There's some fairly promising things that came out of that to the extent that we could endorse and had the Board of Regents endorse at that meeting the requested tuition increase for out-of-state and for one of our resident graduate programs and some other activities that are important for us regarding the sale of one of our unused facilities and the new lease arrangement. So some positive things for us in that regard, as well as some other behind the scenes, not in front, but basically some discussions with some individuals that will help us as we continue to try to get our capital budget request back in play. And as you know, the three items that are significant from the Northwest Quad, from the IRC or Integrated Research Building and the basketball practice facility, we need to get those supported. And I could go through the details in whatever level you'd like, but those are continuing to be discussed and how we can move those back in. There were the Joint Finance Committee public hearings in Milwaukee at Alverno College. We've talked about that earlier. We have been continuing to have our meetings with schools, colleges, and academic units. As you know, in terms of this format, we have gone from, instead of a weekly format, we're meeting with all the schools and colleges and having these monthly forums. We met today with the School of Freshwater Sciences. We've met now with 4 or 5 separate schools, and we will continue to have those throughout May. And we'll continue to have meetings. So at this point, what I'll do is ask Robin and Johannes to talk about the budget task force, the planning that's gone on, and quickly narrate some of the background there and move into more of the details on where we are with our recommendations. Robin and Johannes.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to stand up here, and my co-chair Johannes will jump in with any additional remarks as I go along. The Budget Planning Task Force has been meeting weekly over the last month and a half, and we've had very productive, constructive discussions to date. All of the chairs of the governance groups that are represented up here have been members of the task force, and also Rebecca Clapper is the chair of the APBC. Just to remind folks, our charge is to manage the 15-17 budget cut and achieve net positive operating income for UWM within a defined number of years with sustainable growth thereafter in support of the mission of UWM. I have an important caveat to that, and I would thank Professor Allender for this. The cut as proposed in the governor's budget is massive and deep, and quite frankly, just too large. A cut of this magnitude cannot be managed without causing harm to our mission. Having said that, our charge for the task force is to plan based on what we have before us and to do our very best to manage this for the good of the campus and the students that we serve. It's also important to note that the committee makes recommendations to the chancellor, who makes all final decisions in this process. We are asking for your continued patience as we work through this. We are intentionally taking a thoughtful, methodical approach, and this work takes time. Also, very importantly, as the chancellor noted, the cuts are not yet final and in fact could be reduced from what is in the governor's proposal. President Cross last week told the regents that he has seen momentum building in the work with legislators to reduce the cut. I'm now going to provide an update of the committee's work to date, ending with an overview of the voluntary separation incentive plan, with time for questions and answers. First, the task force set about examining the impact of the budget cut as proposed in the governor's proposal, and we've done our best to estimate what UWM will need to come up with in the first year, second year, and thereafter to pay for the cut. This slide shows an overview of our best estimate of the magnitude and the ramifications of the cut at this point in time. As you can see in the top left-hand column, you see the GPR reduction. That's that $20 million that we've been talking about as the base reduction. It's actually $20,430,000. In addition, we're planning, if the public authority as presently defined went through, and that's the best statement of what the budget is that we have right now, there would be some additional costs to continue for fringe benefits that would normally be covered by the state that we would add on top of this amount. We would then anticipate some new revenue. Last week, the board passed or proposed increases for non-resident and graduate tuition, and there's a small amount of that $675,000 is what would come back to the central pool. It's about 20% of new tuition that we decided that we could scoop up to help pay for the cut. It's a very small amount relative to the whole size of the cut. And we also factored in a very conservative estimate of our increased tuition due to changes in enrollment in the future at about 0.7%. So that results in a shortfall for FY16 of just over $23 million. For FY17, we would carry over that amount because all of those costs and new revenues would continue. And then in that year, we would see some additional costs, again related to cost to continue, some additional payments for municipal services that are new, some other costs in the amount of about $2.6 additional million. Then there would be some new revenue in that year. The ongoing revenue would be, again, a very conservative projection for some enrollment changes, 0.7%, as well as a new payment that would come to the UW system and ultimately to UWM for Minnesota students. And in addition, there would be a one-time payment that year for a GPR appropriation that would then go away the next year. So the total net shortfall for FY17 would be just over $21 million. Our next step was then to examine options for the first year, FY 2016, which is right around the corner. We considered how much in permanent cuts we could strategically apply by July 1st. We considered temporary savings, including use of one-time balances, but we know our balances are already declining due to our campus-wide commitments, and our true reserve is less than $1 million. We considered the cost containment measures that are currently in place and will continue, delays in non-essential hiring, salary increases, and travel. We also talked about and considered furloughs, and we discovered that if we applied the maximum furlough that is legally permissible, that's 8 days for 12-month employees and 6 days for 9-month employees, and if we applied it across campus, the maximum amount that we could generate in 1 year would be about $6 million towards that total cut. After considerable discussion and reflection, the recommendation of the Budget Planning Task Force, with also support of the support team to the Budget Planning Task Force, was to consider the first year of this next biennium as a lapse, that is, one-time contributions from units, and to reserve allocating the permanent cuts until FY 2017. That does not mean that we would wait until 2017 to allocate those cuts, but that's the year that they would take effect, the permanent cuts. The Budget Planning Task Force also recommended first gathering information on scenarios from campus units before recommending how to allocate that one-time lapse so that we can better understand the impact of these one-time cuts and contributions across all of the units on campus. This approach will allow us to separate the impact from the FY16 allocation and the FY17 permanent allocation. It would allow us to make decisions on permanent cuts after we have more information, including the actual amount of the cut that we don't know yet, as well as the impact of the cut scenarios on the campus. It would allow us to take time with campus-wide personnel decisions, especially layoffs, and if possible, avoid or defer on furloughs, as this overall would contribute even further to negative morale on campus. This does not mean that we are proposing to pay for the FY16 cut from balances. There will likely be a continued drawdown of our campus-wide balances, but we anticipate that the majority of the one-time contributions would have to come from savings generated by spending reductions since February of this year and continuing up through the upcoming fiscal year. The key is that these spending reductions are not necessarily the same as permanent reductions that would begin in FY17. To this end, on April 2nd, Provost Britz and I sent out a memo to the Chancellor and Vice Chancellors, which has since been disseminated throughout the units on campus. By April 18, we are asking that units submit back to the task force scenario planning for a one-time cut for 2016. We've intentionally allocated out to 5 large segments of campus a larger cut than anticipated, $26 million, so that we can make adjustments and provide relief as necessary to alleviate the worst of the impacts. And in fact, we would have more room if the size of the cuts actually go down. The scenario planning assignments that were given out to the units were the General Education Administration. These are a few of the units that fall under the Chancellor, such as Global Inclusion, University Relations and Communications, and Development. That's a relatively small area. That target allocated to that unit was $700,000. Academic Affairs, the largest of the 5 units, $13 million. Those are all the schools and colleges and units under the provost. Student Affairs, $5 million. Finance and Administrative Affairs, $4 million. And the Central Pool, this is a pool that's maintained centrally for central objectives such as our new facilities. It does have a small budget and a significant share of campus balances, and so we allocated $3.3 million target to that unit. These are all just targets. These are not cut allocations at this point. The provost and I have gotten some feedback resulting from this request for scenarios. One is that these are just too large. We know that these are really large numbers once you break it down for units. And we are hopeful that the final numbers will be smaller than the targets that we've handed out for many areas. We've also heard that the cut is unfair, and we want to emphasize that the actual cut has not yet been allocated. That will happen after the task force reviews the one-time scenarios. And bear in mind, every unit, and we've heard from many units, have arguments about why their budget or funding is special and should not be touched. And we understand that sentiment. But many are feeling it across the board. We'll have a better idea of the actual permanent cut in the next 6 weeks to 2 months. So in the April 2nd memo that we sent out, we also asked all units to submit by May 8th scenario planning for a permanent 5 to 10% cut for FY17 and beyond. Those scenarios had actually been requested earlier, but we extended the deadline so that units could first accommodate our request for the one-time scenario planning. Now, the Budget Planning Task Force is and will continue to grapple with how to drive bigger changes, not just cutting around the margins, which we know is not sustainable in the long run for the permanent cuts. However, we wanted the units who know their business and activities the best to first tell us how they would address the cuts, and we will see through the scenario planning. The Budget Planning Task Force will then carefully review those recommendations and respond. I would anticipate that the task force may have some additional suggestions and feedback for the units after reviewing the scenarios. Ultimately, the Budget Planning Task Force will make recommendations as to the allocation of the permanent base cut in FY17 and beyond to the Chancellor for his final decision. So that leads me to the Voluntary Separation Incentive Program. As an intermediate tool or an immediate tool for units, the Budget Planning Task Force considered proposals for a voluntary separation incentive program, and a week ago Friday made a recommendation to the Chancellor for such a program. That program was accepted by the Chancellor and has now been formally announced today. What this program is not, first of all, it's not a requirement, it's purely voluntary, hence the title, no one can be required to take advantage of this program. It's not an entitlement, not everyone will qualify for this. It will only be used where units believe that it will generate needed savings through a reduction in personnel costs. It's also not going to solve our budget cut. It's not the answer to all of our problems. It is one tool among a multifaceted approach to responsibly deal with the proposed budget cuts. The program document and some additional information has now been posted online, and you will see in that program document that the VSIP has 4 purposes. They are to reduce salary, wage, and benefit costs in anticipation of the funding challenges, redirect positions to focus on priorities, changing needs or strategic objectives, and I will note that that will not happen centrally, that is a tool that's being given to units to do that, achieve other cost savings or efficiencies, and minimize potential involuntary terminations. In terms of eligibility, eligible employees are those who are vested in the Wisconsin retirement system and would be eligible to receive a full annuity as of July 1st, 2015. We haven't set an age requirement in our policy, but based on ETF rules, that would be individuals who are 65 years and older with at least 5 years of service, or 57 years and older and 30 years of service. And also, those employees must be within a participating department. Deans and division heads will be evaluating whether it makes financial sense for a department to participate. That is, whether the incentive is needed in order to accelerate reduction in personnel and thus achieve budgetary savings. Not all departments will participate, as units will have to weigh the costs against the anticipated savings and make pragmatic decisions on whether a department will participate. There are some exclusions that apply as well, and those are detailed in the program document. All employees who are invited to apply and who are eligible and are in a participating department will be accepted. There will not be a decision made based individual by individual. All employees who are invited will ultimately be accepted. The incentive that's being offered is a one-time payment equal to 50% of a person's base salary, and that payment can be taken as a lump sum or a contribution to a qualified account, such as a health savings account or a 401(b). There's some other accounts that apply. The timeline is fairly compressed. What's going to happen is that deans and division heads will be making recommendations to the chancellor on whether or not departments within their units will participate by April 24th. After that, employees who are eligible, including being within a participating department, will be notified by Human Resources on or before May 1st. Employees must then submit applications by the close of business on May 22nd, 3 weeks later. Employees will be notified of their acceptance and status no later than June 15th. However, as I said, all eligible employees will be accepted. Separation dates will be determined on a case-by-case basis based on discussions between the employee and the dean or division head, but in any case must fall between August 1st, 2015 and January 31st, 2016. Human Resources will begin information sessions on this program even before employees are notified of eligibility, starting on April 21st and 22nd. There will be at least 6 sessions over 3 weeks, more if necessary, and the currently scheduled dates and times are posted on the web at this point. So before we move into the questions and answers, I just want to thank the members of the Budget Planning Task Force and support teams for all of their work to date, as well as the APBC that provided input into the recommendations made so far, and the many individuals who have submitted individual suggestions to the task force. We've been sharing that information, and we will be working through it as we continue our work over the next weeks and months ahead. We hope that the actual cuts will be less and that we are over-planning in terms of the size of the cuts. However, even if the cut were to be reduced significantly, we are currently leaving this biennium with an ongoing structural deficit that's the result of our current tuition freeze, our current budget cut, and some enrollment stagnation. And we would likely need to take some dramatic actions to achieve a sustainable future, even if the cut is less. So the Budget Planning Task Force knows that this work must happen regardless, and we will keep working on this until we have in hand a sustainable plan for the future. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. And I have Tim Danielson standing by as well in case there are questions that I can't answer, but I will do my best. I think this is a first. Hi, Erica.
Hi. Erica Sander, I guess you all know me. How were, what's unclear to many people, maybe this is an inconvenient question, Robin, for that I'll apologize, but it has to be asked. How were departments identified? Or was it individuals and then departments?
At this point, all departments are eligible to apply, and we are asking deans and division heads to evaluate whether or not those departments will participate. In the program document, there is a list of criteria, that we're asking departments to use in making that determination, and they have to submit a written justification for any department that is participating and is not participating. And it really comes down to whether or not the incentive is needed in order to achieve a reduction in personnel consistent with the budget cut planning.
Okay. And then at the other end, have you considered that, let's say you're fortunate and you get, $1.5 million, maybe even $2 million in savings. What we're left with is inadequate funding in academic affairs to hire qualified teaching, academic staff and faculty in particular to replace. If you think you're going to save money by retiring out, if you will, senior faculty, my experience, and I handled this stuff for 7 years intimately, and I'm dated, maybe it's different today, but to replace those faculty, even with junior faculty, assistant professors, costs more on a 9-month basis than what senior people, professors who are salary compressed are making today. Any thoughts? Have you talked about that?
That is a key issue. I think deans and division heads, when they look at a department, are going to have to be very pragmatic and look at what would be the costs that they would incur as a result of having these employees leave. And if the costs are greater, then it would not make sense to offer the incentive in that department.
And would you say there is a commitment to maintaining a strong faculty academic basis to a given department to support programs at all levels of education, baccalaureate through PhD?
Maybe I would ask their provost to address that.
So what do you say, Tim? No, I think that is just not a good scenario to be in, and I think as the Chancellor alluded right at the beginning, this came to us. We explored every single possible option on what would be the best for the campus to protect also the quality but also the morale. It was clear that furloughs got a very negative sense of most people that we referenced to, and we have to be strategic in the way we approach this. But my sense is, as far as we can, you protect the quality and the teaching and the learning and the experience of our students on campus.
With all due respect, in the past crises I've lived through, which have been a few, of this ilk, retirement severance type packages were not clearly as potentially erosive as this plan of attack is, if it's played out to the nth degree. There is a concern nationally about what this is going to do to the quality of higher education in general, and rather than get in that discussion, I have one more quick question. It has to do with benefits. Did your group consider ways in which you can provide an incentive calling it nothing more than increasing the base rate of pay rather than a lump sum, highly tax liable buyout, if you will, which has no impact on one's base salary rate, which has a direct impact on what one's annuity will be? Do you know what I'm asking?
Did you say you asked if we had considered applying
Yes.
it as part of
Yes.
the base salary and not as a lump sum?
Yes.
I don't know if we specifically considered that, Julie.
So you're talking about raising someone's rate of pay prior to their retirement?
Yes, it's done for 9-month appointees by guaranteeing summer appointments, that kind of thing.
There's actually a bit of a problem from ETF's perspective with that. They do monitor for spikes in pay that precede retirements. And so you've got to tread very carefully if that is in any way deemed to be a quid pro quo. So if it's not a natural base salary increase, ETF may actually take measures to reduce the benefit that would accrue from that higher rate of pay or otherwise manage the situation.
I prefer to look at the glass half full, Jolie and the rest of you, and that is, I'm assuming, if I'm a 9-month person and I was in that category, I had a legitimate appointment teaching courses that had to be taught, and I was the one specialized enough to teach them. If you can't play that game, then God bless this place. Anyway, if you're in the retirement window and you're here to find out more, I suggest you find out more about that. It's a very, very important thing in terms of the use of your accrued sick leave for paying benefits, health care benefits, 1, and 2, your annuity payment itself. Thank you.
Erica, just one comment. You had asked about protecting the academic mission at the beginning of your comments, and I did want to point people to the Budget Planning Task Force's overview and charge is posted on the website, and included and very important to us are the core principles that we're working under and are informing all of the recommendations that we're making. And there's 7 principles there on the slide deck here, but the top principle is protecting our core mission and values. Any other questions?
My name is Jay Moore. I'm a professor of in the psychology department. I was just curious whether it's the expectation of the campus that the students who would otherwise be taught by any faculty who take this separation program, if those students would be inserted into the surviving faculty in a department such that their class sizes would then increase. I just wondered what would what the planning is for that, for the surviving faculty.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that in deciding whether or not departments can participate, planning to cover those vacancies would have to be part of the consideration process, and that's part of the criteria that are listed and that deans and division heads are asked to consider before making that decision.
Well, is the campus going to turn those students away? I mean, the answer has to be either yes or no. Either yes, the students would be plugged into the other classes that are being taught somewhere on the campus, if not in that same department, or no, those students would be turned away. Now, I trust that there are financial implications as far as generating revenue through whatever mechanism it is now, if it's tuition. I trust that there are financial implications for tuning students away, and characteristically we have not sought to do that. So then it seems to me that the implication is that class sizes are going to increase for the survivors. And so those of us who might be in the retirement window are now faced with a choice of, do we accept this or do we visit a certain increase in class sizes on our colleagues?
I think that's a fair implication from this.
Good.
All right.
Bruce Fetter from the retirees. Can you give us a notion of the current state of discussions with the legislators on the future structure and, for example, especially that rather dubious authority which is proposed, and how this affects the projections you're making about the cuts?
Thank you, Bruce. I cannot give you much input on the legislative discussion regarding the public authority. I haven't heard much beyond what's been in the newspaper. I've had no discussion about that. My discussion with legislators has been primarily around the size of the cut and advocacy for UW-Milwaukee. Tom, I don't know if you've had any further discussion. I know in the last week to 2 weeks you've spent some time with legislators.
Yeah, I've been in Madison every week over the last couple of months, and last week the conversations that I've been having face-to-face with legislators show that there's a split. There are still some who believe that the proposal for a public authority is a good one and ought to be pursued. I'd say that there is a big swath of people in the middle who believe that flexibility is a good thing, but really not certain that the public authority is the best route to get to accomplish that task. And then you have what I would say is a growing number of legislators who have reached a position of saying no to public authority at all right now because of questions that they've raised, either about the way in which the public authority was formulated or the reaction of the regents to the public authority idea. We really won't get a true reading of this until there's a vote in joint finance that will determine whether that provision stays in the budget, that goes to the floor of the Assembly and the Senate, or if it's polled, modified, substituted before it goes. We're probably another 2 or 3 weeks away, I think, before we get a clearer read on that.
Okay. Tom, this might be a good idea for you to talk a little bit. We've got one slide for you to cover briefly on the Budget Communication Task Force. Maybe some quick perspectives on that.
Sure, you bet. Over my shoulder, you can see our quick report here. The Budget Communication Task Force continues to meet every other week. It's really a terrific collection of faculty, staff, students, and our support team that has been producing the tools that we've been using to communicate our story, and has proven to be incredibly effective in terms of helping to create strategies that work, whether it's the letter writing campaign that took place right here in this building a few weeks ago, to the buttons that many people are wearing around campus on a regular basis, or some really good ideas in terms of how we can go ahead and refine our message, both in the one-on-one meetings that the Chancellor and I have been doing with legislators, and some of you have been connecting face-to-face with legislators, and we deeply appreciate that. The Budget Information website is another one of those tools that we monitor at the task force, and it changes all the time. And I may sound like a broken record when I get up here, and I encourage you to visit the budget website, but it's only because it continues to evolve and evolve rapidly from week to week. We have many new infographics that we have posted that have proven to be a wonderful, wonderful way to give you a quick 30-second elevator speech to take both to your neighbors, members of the public, or ideally to legislators when you're out there. One of the more interesting elements that we just provided or added to the site is a listing of all of the state legislators, each of the assemblymen and women and each of the senators listed. And next to their name, we've got the number of UWM students who are currently enrolled here at UWM who come from that legislative district, as well as numerically a summary of how many alumni live in those individual legislative districts. And it's a remarkable tool because it demonstrates what we have been saying for many, many years, that the reach of UWM goes so far beyond southeastern Wisconsin. So we encourage you to look at the site and identify what information strikes a chord within you that would allow you to be an effective advocate for what we're doing. There's also information on the site about our upcoming April 22nd UWM Day in the Capitol, sponsored through the Alumni Association. We'll be taking a busload. Right now it's one bus. We'd love to bring more than one busload of advocates over to meet with legislators and, again, face-to-face, talk about the value of UWM. A couple of other ideas. One is the car magnet. We started this a few years ago just to build spirit within the institution, and with the advice of our communication task force, we will soon be reissuing to everybody here, courtesy of our foundation. Not a penny of tax dollars went into this, but our foundation will be providing another magnet for you to either put on the back of your car or bicycle, or a friend, a neighbor, a family member's vehicles, because that becomes a rolling billboard for UWM, and it again is a signal in this very, very cluttered environment that we live in, with 1 million brand messages thrown at us every day, to think about UWM. And a message from the Chancellor will be accompanying the magnet, which will help give you a better idea of just how effective that can be. And then the final note that I would share with you today is the day in which we officially launch the hashtag UWM Vital campaign. This is a program that is designed actually with the direct help of our students. We think that it can work very effectively with students who have come to us, who have said, give us something special. Give us a way in our own language, in our own way, to talk about UWM. So beginning today, we now have this social media campaign urging students to take a picture of themselves holding or wearing these little stickers that are hashtag UWM Vital in a setting or an environment where UWM indeed is vital. It might be a place where they're doing community service work. It could be in a classroom where they are learning great things or participating in a research project that makes a difference, or out and about in the community. Faculty and staff are also encouraged to use the same program. We do have stickers available. In fact, I think we have them here in the back of the room, so you can grab some on the way out. Or just contact our office and we will get them. But it's a terrific way, we think, for students who are at the ground level of learning here at UWM to demonstrate their pride. And we'll be also putting many of those pictures on the UWM homepage right below the main fold where you see UWM right now. I'm told we launched the program, about 10 o'clock this morning, and we already had our first entry, so we'll try to populate that site. And again, the bottom line is we urge our students to put it on their social media site. So when they tweet it, it can be retweeted. When it goes up on Instagram, it can be seen by all of their followers. And we welcome your continued ideas on how to make sure that our story is one that is fresh and powerful as we move over these next 6 weeks towards the completion of the budget process.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Scott Emmons, Peck School of the Arts. And I'm wondering if there are any conversations at the system level about maybe consolidating some of the functions of the various campuses in hopes that will kind of soften the blow to our academic programs.
Two comments. Thank you. Good question. One is that system has said, with respect to how each campus has a very different circumstance surrounding it. So, for example, you saw that Madison and Eau Claire really moved ahead quickly with some of their cuts because they had not absorbed the full impact of the previous cut. We had done much more financially conservative approaches toward that, so we had largely absorbed that, not completely, but much more so than they had. And so they knew they had to move a little more quickly. But that's an example of every campus has its own, not only current and past cash situation, but also their projections and unique to each of their particular geographic locations, the programs that they have. So the stance has been that every campus really should be addressing this in their own ways. That said, very, very early in this budget process, as I've gotten to know the other chancellors, we saw some great administrative efficiencies, and I'll give Robin Van Harpen some credit for really bringing this to my attention, the fact that the chief budget officers had some initial discussion. So I called the chancellors in the southeastern Wisconsin schools, the 3-4 years, the Whitewater Parkside, and then also talked to the folks in the 2-year schools in Washington County and Waukesha County and said, let's get together. And then I learned later that the back of the house efficiencies at UW colleges and extension have been doing that for a while, so they wanted to have their provost and chancellor very much involved in their budget officer. So that person, Steve Wildeck, attended. I brought the chancellors and our chief budget officers together about 2 to 3 weeks ago now, and we left with the very clear directive for while there were a number of areas that could be examined and discussed, we left with 2 specific areas. In HR and in procurement, what are the areas that could be identified for efficiency and effectiveness? And the charge to the group, and Robin is leading the group in the HR, bringing all the HR folks together for those campuses. And by the way, we added in Oshkosh and Green Bay, and then recently Stevens Point. So we've really got the eastern corridor of the state where we've got 8 of the campuses that are involved, including UW colleges and extension, which brings the power of really the 13 2-years to look very specifically at this. So that's round 1. Round 2 is where we are now bringing the provosts and the chancellors together from those same institutions to start talking about academic and program collaboration. Where can there be areas in which we can explore great opportunities? So as an example, and this is just a hypothetical, has not been advanced, but we have, with our work in the School of Freshwater Sciences, become the academic centerpiece of the Water Council and this has 170 member companies, and a lot of them that rely upon us for the innovation and the unique work that we can bring in terms of some of the research questions that we explore. Now, as it turns out, UW-Whitewater has a specialization at the undergraduate level in their business school that also is collaborating with their College of Letters and Science. So they have 2 academic units that are partnering on a specialization in fresh water. We do not have that. One could argue, well, we could have it too. But if we did a Me Too type of thing, then that's the duplication that is not as efficient as if we could partner with them with the things that we're already doing at the graduate level and find other opportunities at the undergraduate level on our campus. There's lots of energy and we could become better known. That's just a potential example. Whitewater may say, no, we don't want to participate, we don't want to play, or so forth. But as I shared this idea with the university committee recently, Professor Margot Anderson pointed out that I think it was in the 1980s, and I don't know if Margot is in the audience here, but I think Margot said that it was in the 1980s that in fact there was a similar program, and I can't remember if it was the Urban Corridor or some program like that. Mark, I don't know if you recall the name that Margot mentioned.
I don't remember.
But it was, the point is, we're in some ways revisiting that, but it's all for the purposes, Scott, that you identified. How can we do this to be an enterprise that really works together from a systems perspective to identify collaborations that strengthen opportunities for the students, build efficiencies and greater effectiveness in. So when I talked to System President Ray Cross about this, and I've been keeping him informed and the Regent President Michael Falbo informed, they said, this is great. Please lead, please move ahead on this. So that's the type of thing that we're doing, and more will be shared as we have more that's concrete. At this point, it's formative. We're very much exploring this, and I will tell you, when we left the first meeting with the chancellors and the CBOs, there was incredible enthusiasm and people saying, we have needed to do this, this is critically important, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. Robin and Tim, I don't know if you have any additional comments because you guys are now helping build that.
I would just say, well, first of all, although I'm in charge of it, Tim Danielson is now taking the lead and pulling together all the HR directors. The regional effort is really important because we've seen from some experience, it's not always easy for system to move quickly when they're gathering all the campuses together, and whereas we, by agreement, are choosing to move forward and collaborate, I think we may be able to move faster. And one of the principles that the HR team has developed right away is that not every campus has to participate. If it doesn't make sense for them, that's fine. And the basis for this is so that we can move forward quickly and look for opportunities to collaborate and find some efficiencies. In addition to the regional efforts, System also is working on 2 things. One is they've engaged Huron consulting firm to do a review of the IT function across System and the HR function. And on the IT side, our CIO, Bob Beck, has been selected to serve on the steering committee for that review. And in addition, on the HR side, the same team that's working with System is a team that came to campus and did an assessment here of our HR function. So we're confident that they know our campus and our needs very well. And so System is also working through those efforts. So we think that through a multi-level approach, we'll see what gets ahead fastest, and we're just going to take advantage of those opportunities and run with them.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Aaron Harris, currently a sophomore here at the university, majoring in pharmacy. And my question is, since I'm considered an out-of-state student and the campus budget is directly affecting us, I don't know if I'm the only student in here, but I wanted to know my college experience for the spring semester, because I transferred here from Little Rock of last year. So I wanted to know that how or what methods are provided to help us ease our way through this process, because for the fall semester, I want to re-enroll because I feel that UWM will help me through my college process as far as getting my bachelor's degree and going through graduate school. But come the fall semester of 2015, I would still be considered an out-of-state student. So I don't want to experience the burden of paying that extra amount of money. So my question is, what are some methods to help us ease through that process?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, we love having you here, so you're welcome, and appreciate your question. We we are looking at trying to keep the cost for, whether it's in-state or out-of-state, cost increases as modest as possible. As you probably are aware, we've had a freeze on our tuition for the last several years, and looking forward, we do have to continue that freeze for our undergraduate resident tuition. As far as additional ways to help shoulder that burden, to provide some relief from that, let me ask our provost or our folks in finance and administrative affairs what thoughts they have on that.
Which, of course, the difficult scenario we're in is, we are sensitive to tuition for students, just philosophically, to say, we want to make it affordable as a public institution, but then there's the expectation, of course, that the public good will support public education, which doesn't always happen. So we need to find that balance. And the challenge is, and that's when we were at CMAT, the Chancellor's Enrollment Management Action Team, when we made a decision on the increase or not increase, we kept it low, like at 2.5%, and we compared that with all the other surrounding states also to make sure that it's actually even more affordable than we can, as low as we can. But the challenge we face is, again, yes, student debt is way too high, but the support for public education is on the other end way too low in the sense of finding that balance. So we are sensitive where you can find financial aid or scholarships. That's a key theme also of our comprehensive campaign. I think it's really students first, Pat, in terms of a comprehensive campaign for the next 4 years, still thinking on that, is really focus on support for our students to help them specifically financially getting through your studies.
Yeah. So I'd encourage you to take a look and really work closely with our financial aid office, folks in schools and colleges, but also in the Campus Central financial aid for any type of tuition assistance or scholarship that maybe you'd be eligible for.
Yeah, I had another comment. I was talking to one of the financial aid advisors, and I found out that I would have to work for 1 full year in Milwaukee to be considered an in-state student. But the thing is, college is already an expense itself, so that takes up most of our money. So even with the scholarships and grants, it will help out, but then again, the tuition is still raised. So do the scholarships and grants raise, or do they remain the same? Because if they remain the same, then there's no help. Well, I don't see how it helps us.
Well, one of the goals that we have is to try to increase the amount of tuition assistance, the scholarship support that we can identify as much as we can. Student success is critical, and we know that financial assistance is a key piece to that. I think that, as the provost has said, the challenges in front of us require us to try to find some relief somewhere in our system to be able to raise the tuition in a modest area where we can. And it's unfortunate, and I wish it weren't that way.
Okay, thank you.
Want to talk from this?
Just 2 clarifications on that as well. The 2.5% increase for non-resident undergraduates does not apply to students from the MSCP states. So for the 7 surrounding states that are MSCP states, that tuition is 150% of our in-state tuition, so that is not included in the 2.5% increase. Also, what was really key in the discussions with CMAT and on campus before the proposal was made to the board is that this is a 1-year increase only. There's no proposal for future years. So with the budget planning task force discussions, we've not counted on any future increases to tuition. We just don't know what scenarios will look like, and we wanted to be very conservative in that regard as well.
And just for background, that amount, the most that we would potentially raise from that, in other words, it's not an answer. It's all these pieces together. It would be about $1.7 million. Again, like the voluntary separation incentive program, not large amounts, but we're trying to find all those areas that we can. So yes.
So my question is, when the mandatory cuts come, right now, I mean, you've described the voluntary cuts, but when the mandatory cuts come, are they going to be across the board, or are you going to make an effort to decide what areas are essential for the university's mission?
It's really going to be more in the latter area. We're going to look at the guiding principles, and we've had historically across-the-board cuts, and we're going to recognize that the sacrifices will be shared, but some areas we might have more cuts in than others, just to preserve what is critical for the strategic direction from our core mission of the campus. Well, let me offer a few closing comments, and then thank you again. I want to talk about the strengths, and then on the next slide, some things that are coming, future steps. As I mentioned at the outset, our strengths really reside from our faculty, our staff, all our valued employees to serve our students. The personal impact of this is real. Every day, I see it. Every day, you share stories with me. I have plenty of examples, and I welcome them in terms of hearing the stories. I know that we have done, through our communication team, a lot to share and capture those stories, to keep that in the front and center. I've talked with regents, I've talked with a number of individuals, I've shared really the 10 different effects of the cuts, categorically, the types of things that have been talked about today. The increased class sizes, and by the way, many of these issues are not new. They're just going to be, in some ways, a little more challenging in the future. We have experienced 15 years of cuts. We're in an era of a real different level of support for higher education. There's not a day that goes by, in fact, it's multiple times a day these days that I'm getting emails about what's happening across the country. Today it was Oregon. Before that, there's the 8 states that have disinvested, but even in states that have historically been very supportive. Washington State, the story I heard a few weeks ago, and then it's come out even further in terms of why this happened. But the president of the University of Washington, who went to a university in Texas because of what was described as a hostile environment for higher ed. This is not unique. It's incredibly unfortunate what we're going through, but it tells me we have to continue to do an even greater job demonstrating our value and our impact. We have been too shy, we have been too modest, we have been too humble about the greatness that we have. As we know, because of our experiences, the transformational experiences, the quality that we have brought on so many different fronts, what we do in research, what we do with students, what we do with the community, what we do on so many different levels all the time, has to continue to be first and foremost advanced and argued for and lobbied for. Despite that, there is in higher education today a mandate for us to think about a future where we are positioning ourselves for great success and continued success. This is the scenario that's in front of us, and I think that with your help, and this is where we need all your help, all your assistance, that of the folks here, the work that you do, the different ways in which you can continue to provide that great strength, that's what we need to continue to keep our shoulder forward and think about how do we create a UWM that continues to rely upon the wonderful qualities, the attributes that you all bring. That's what we're so dedicated to, and at the same time, really appreciate how difficult this is because we care so much about all of the outcomes that I've described and that you know so well, how it becomes personal, how it becomes that touch, that student, that organization we work with in the community that means so much to so many lives and family members and community members. So we have to continue to find ways to do that in a challenging context. There's no question about it. We are not in this alone. It's not just the other UW institutions, it's challenging in lots of states, and I have colleagues, increasing number of colleagues as I've been going to some of the conferences nationally, and it's something that's not unique any longer. I want to continue to provide reassurances that we will provide as much information, we will share it with you, not I would hope in a manner that you read about it in the newspaper a few days before we can share it here. Again, my apologies, but really in a very candid, forthright manner as we go through this. Know that the individuals that are working on this have the best long-term interest of UWM at heart. The guiding principles are core. I encourage you to stay up with all the information as Tom Lujak has pointed out on the website. There's some promising things. At the less than $1 million level, Pat Borger, our Vice Chancellor for Development, has shared that one of the sentiments that's come through is this idea of how I realize that my support is more necessary than ever, and there's an uptick in giving. There's a number of individuals who realize that. Also at the larger donor level, there's some great things happening, and I look forward by the time we're done with some of these budget challenges in terms of knowing what the effect will be and what the size of the cup, to be able to tell you more about some of these gifts. So I would anticipate in the next 4 to 6 weeks to potentially be able to describe some of these in a great way in a very public setting. So there's some very good things happening there, with a similar sentiment that people realize that the private sector and donor activity is going to be one of the big parts of the answers. Sometimes people say to me, because we've been having a series of campaign cabinets, they've been saying, can we use donor activity to help with the budget cut? The challenge with that, as you can probably all appreciate, is that oftentimes your donor activities are either endowments or they're one-time gifts. And the budget cuts are base budget. In other words, they're ongoing. So it's not going to help a whole lot. Plus, if it's an endowment, you're not going to generate a lot that would really affect that. But there are targeted activities that donors really want to support, and that's what we have to continue to cultivate. We've got a number of friends, a number of individuals. For example, Mary Ann Wright, Senior Vice President for Technology at Johnson Controls, who wrote a very emphatic multi-page letter to all the members of Joint Finance. She shared that with me last week. You've seen perhaps the support of Shel Lubar, not just in terms of signing a blog, but also writing directly to the governor and members of Joint Finance. On and on and on. Lots of individuals who are very supportive and continue to hold sway. That's one of the reasons why I think Board of Regent President Ray Cross last week could talk about how much his visits have been characterized by the legislators that want to find a way to mitigate the cut. There's a lot of momentum behind that, and I think that's encouraging. I keep my fingers crossed as well. I've talked before about the campus recognitions and the progress that we make on the national and international front. We also have talked before about enrollment-based marginal tuition revenue growth. So that we hope continues to be upheld for next year. As far as what's coming up, we will have our next campus-wide budget meeting on May 8th from 9 to 10. In Bolton 150. If there's additional news, if there's additional things, we will call a campus-wide meeting if there's any large news that is important. We will have the 6 meetings between now and then on the VSIP, as were shared earlier by Robin. So we'll have those and of course continue to send us your questions if you have any along the way. I'd give Sue Westlow, Helene Hickson, Carrie, and others credit for really being able to respond and engage with respect to those questions. On Tuesday, tomorrow, we have 3 regents joining the Academic Staff Committee meeting. Regents Pruitt, Vasquez, and Milner will be here tomorrow, and the time of that is at 2:30, and the location is in Architecture 170. It's the Senate, the Academic Staff Senate meeting. Thank you, Sarah. And we'll be sharing with them ahead some of the themes that have come through in terms of the questions that have been advanced, as well as any specific questions that have been raised recently from the academic staff for them. On Wednesday, I'll be addressing the Milwaukee Press Club. There's a newsmaker luncheon, so this is just another one of the types of activities that I'll be able to talk about the things that are happening and talk about the importance of UW-Milwaukee. They have their own specific questions, but this is, Tom, how many individuals will be there from the press? 75. So this is certainly one of those types of meetings where whatever is said is out in the press that day. But this is not just an example of where you have one media outlet, but all of them together. So this is an important meeting. Our Faculty Senate meeting is on Thursday afternoon, where we'll have continued discussion. One of the things that we'll be hearing from is more of the budget details for the Faculty Senate that Robin and Johannes will be sharing on that afternoon. And then again, the school college units do continue. So those are really the key points that we can share with you today. I want to thank you again for everything you do, and I look forward to seeing you in our next meetings and in the hallways. Thanks. Okay.